Let me introduce you to the $100 anamorphic lens. This is the Helios 44-2, and kind of despite its name, it's actually a 58mm f2. It's a Russian vintage lens, and this one in particular I picked up off of eBay and had it kind of like a Cinemod by a Ukrainian. It also, along with a Cinemod, was an anamorphic mod. Anamorphic lenses are lenses that are able to capture a really wide field of view, and it does this by kind of squeezing the image on the sensor. And so it requires a de-squeezing in post, but it makes sure that the image isn't distorted at all, even when your subject is really close up, like you'd usually get on a wide angle lens. The other cool characteristic of an anamorphic lens is this really wide, usually blue flare that the lens produces as well. So when calling this an anamorphic lens, it's not. It actually just has this little prism built inside of this mod and produces these crazy flares anytime you see light hitting the lens. I wanted to take it out, test it out, see what it could do, see what the image looked like. And so I reached out to Santana, Sebastian, and Anthony Luft to see if they could help me out and get some shots on my motorcycle. I wanted something with flares, and I don't really have that cool of a car, but I do drive a motorcycle, so I thought it'd be cool to ride around Wailuku and get those lights just flashing and flaring and see if we could actually do something cool. I also wanted to throw in a little bit of comedy. I feel like that's something that I haven't really expressed on this channel, but is a huge part of what I love to do and what I am passionate about. So let me know what you thought of that, if it was too ridiculous, or if you'd want to see more of that. Feel majestic. So I wanted to put together kind of a pros and cons list of this lens, because I do love pros and cons lists, just to give you a better understanding of what this lens is able to do and not able to do, and see if it's something that you'd want to purchase. So jumping right into the pros, I think the first pro is the look that you get out of this lens. It's definitely a vintage look. It's got some unique characteristics. It gives that swirly bokeh that the Helios 44 is really famous for. And so when shooting at f2, you get that swirly bokeh, and you're also getting a nice shallow depth of field, but it's also good in low light if you're shooting that fast. Also, at $100, being inexpensive has got to be a pro. So this is an affordable lens for anybody that would want to pick it up. But like I said, maybe in the cons category, you do have to buy it on eBay. Continuing with those cons, this is a fully manual lens. So some people might find that a pro. Having a fully manual lens, both with your aperture and your focus, it does give you way more control of what you're shooting. With everything in manual, it's all up to you. You're in control. So for some people, that might be just way too much of a hassle and kind of be put in the cons list. And speaking of kind of being fully manual, kind of comes into the build quality. Now, this might have been just the one person that I bought it from on eBay. Again, maybe it's best to do your homework, check out their eBay rating, but this one in particular was pretty sticky when it came to the entire focal range of this lens, or focal throw. It just really stuck when getting kind of closer to infinity. And it also had a weird part kind of rattling around. But again, for $100, this is kind of what you'd expect getting something on eBay. And then lastly, the last con is that this isn't actually an anamorphic lens. It just gives that look, or the look of the flares. But this one didn't even have the blue flare. So quick pros and cons, done. How was this actually shooting? Well, the way that we shot it, with Santana hanging out the back of my truck while Ant was driving, this being a manual lens made it super hard, especially with it being on a gimbal, with it being dark, and with, you know, the motorcycle and the truck going different speeds and just trying to communicate. It made this super tough. But I think with what we shot and what we were able to actually put together, I think it turned out pretty cool. even with the insanity of the lens flares, I think we got some really cool shots. But I thought I'd also just ask Santana because he was the one shooting on this. So here's Santana giving his view on what it was like shooting on this lens.
Hey Matt, so after filming with the Helios Anamorphic with you the other night ago, I gotta say I'm pretty impressed with the image results of it. The f2 aperture of the lens made it super easy to expose in the low light, and being that it was pitch black out there while we were shooting, I'd say the results came out really nice. Some things that I could see being a problem for some people is that there is no autofocus with the lens. It's all manual focus and you've got to pull the focus as you're shooting. Another thing is that when you're shooting head-on to light sources, the flare of the lens does get a little too aggressive for my taste. One thing that I found being helpful with the shooting is shooting at an angle so that the lens flares are not as aggressive. But being that this lens is $100 to $200, you are getting what you paid for. So it's a pretty solid option if I'm recommending a budget anamorphic lens, if we were to say that. But besides that, I really had fun shooting this, Matt, and I look forward to the next project.
Santana's also got a video over on his channel just describing what the whole shoot was like and has put together his own cut of the video. So if you want to check that out, you should check that out. I'll link that in the description below as well. So I gotta say, thanks again to Santana and Ant for the driving, for the shooting. I pretty much just rode my bike around, gave some direction of the types of shots that I wanted, and both those guys, they just killed it. And I was really stoked with putting this together, editing it, and with the final product that came out of it. So overall, would I recommend this lens? Maybe. I think this is a really cool and niche lens. Maybe it could be used for very specific shots or situations, but to me this looked like some kind of crazy Blade Runner Tron kind of insanity with all the flares. Like some of the shots were completely unusable because there was just flares just like it was nuts. So very specific situations you could probably use this. What I would recommend is not the anamorphic version, but just the regular cinemod of the Helios 44-2. I think that's a great lens. You don't get the craziness with the anamorphic flares, and you still get that nice shallow depth of field, swirly bokeh, and the image quality is great. So would I recommend this? Probably not, but you could use it in some cool situations. As always, if you have any questions at all, make sure to put them in the comments below. I'd love to help out any way that I can. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and see you on the next video. How do I look?
Fantastic.
Oh man, I hope this turns out like it is in my head and Okay.